Hi there, and thank you for clicking on my video. I was asked a question by one of the clanmates that I figured I'd talk on here. What do high-level players, which I think by proxy of me being like maxed out on everything, I would count as, what do we do? Because there's nothing to farm. Um, Frankly, whatever we want. Long and the short of it. Video over, right? Uh, but we can talk about it a little more. The fact is that you kind of have to find stuff to stay busy. Um, I started a clan, turned into an alliance, and now I make YouTube videos for people asking questions, both from the alliance, um, anybody in the alliance, and for people from like the comment section, right? Because if I can cover something and cover it in like enough detail, so like somebody can grab it and understand it, or maybe I explain it in a different way than like the modern YouTube algorithm approved for Warframe way of explaining something. If somebody can understand something, it's a success, right? Most people are really comfortable with the quote unquote, I've heard it described as having a conversation with somebody over Discord where they're trying to explain something to you, style of talking. And that's fine. I wouldn't really go in for that, but hey, if it makes sense, I'm down for it. Uh, so here's some of the things that I've done. There's sort of this, you'll notice with a lot of players that are constantly pegged, maxed out, is they sort of develop like a project where it's just something that they enjoy doing. Um, like I started this clan after belonging to a much bigger clan, felt like a number. Everybody's had that story before. You join a big clan, you're just sort of like lost in the sauce. There's 1,000 people in the clan, 4,000 people in the alliance. You think it's a good thing. Got bored of shit. Nobody would talk. They were higher level players than themselves. And I was like the new bro because I had come back to Warframe. So I had started before them, most of them. But then I left because I was playing other games and, college. The fact is when I started really playing Warframe was probably right after Fortuna came out. So that's when I was doing most of my leveling. And the game rhythm for you tends to be build guns, gain MR. But what happens when you're basically waiting on a prime rotation, right? What do you do when you're waiting on a prime rotation? And the fact is you do develop these little projects to try to like do something, and it's basically you stop playing the traditional version of Warframe, where it's like you're grinding, you're farming MR, resources to build weapons, you're getting Forma, you're trying to sell plat, sort of thing. You have to sort of, if you want to play this game and for whatever reason you don't want to move on and play another game and come back when there's a release for Warframe, you can develop a project. I did ribbon collecting. Okay, that was my thing. Some people collect floofs, like one of the clans in the alliance. I I think it would be an understatement to say that they probably have 3,000 floofs in their dojo, and it's literally from like 10 people. Like it's not even a lot when you break it down, but when you start getting to the point where like you have a big open room and you've set up like a congress of floofs with like a little floof like lecturing a congress in a classroom filled with floofs, and there's like 800 floofs in a single room, like people figure out what they're gonna do. So the fact is people figure out something to do most of the time. Some people collect liches. Some people collect floofs. Some people decorate dojos. Or they'll start their own clan and start teaching newer players. I did that a little by proxy, but it wasn't really my goal. Obviously, when um, my clan was solo in like no alliance for a long time. And funny story, my very, very, very first member that I invited, here's how long my clan was solo, right? I basically came back right after Fortuna, and then nobody was in the clan except for one other person that I knew, ironically, from Twitch. And they just wanted to like experience the game and like hang out and whatnot. But my first actual invite from somebody that I didn't know outside of Warframe was during Railjack release. This guy in just some random pub squad, was still getting intrinsics, right? And I joined this guy's flight. It was like when you could do like you actually had to select the node before they had the open flight button. And the guy had figured out, because you didn't have the dry docks and the relays yet, that you could build a railjack in the showcase dojos. So he built his railjack in somebody else's dojo, which is fucking hilarious when you think about it. But he was able to do this because, it loads in your railjack when you go visit the showcase dojos. He figured out you could build your railjack because he didn't have his own clan. He was a solo player. He built his railjack in the showcase dojos, and then he took it out for a flight. Well, there weren't any relays, and he didn't have a dojo, which means he couldn't fucking land. And they hadn't set it up at that point yet, because we had been doing missions for like an hour and a half, 2 hours. Like it was a decent time sink. And then he was like, "All right, guys, like I gotta go, like getting the resources and whatnot for like redoing, because like before GM Point became a thing, you would farm super speedy missions." And there was this bug, I'm not sure that's in the game anymore, where you would let the railjack take damage, and then you would let the crew members heal. Right? You would let them heal, or every time you healed, you would stand there because Lavos came out right with railjack. You would let the Nautilus on cooldown heal the railjack, and every time that happened, you would gain an intrinsic point. So we were running missions with this glass cannon railjack, just constantly letting it break. And we were all running around with Nautiluses, like hyper farming intrinsics before the GM Point, because this was before people had the mods maxed out for GM Point. Like this was super early in Railjack. But anyway, it was a big time sink, and all of a sudden he's like, "All right, guys, I gotta go." And I was like, "Hey, good for him," that whole bullshit. And then he is at the navigation thing, and like it's been like 2 minutes. It's like, okay, maybe he's having some trouble, maybe he's talking to somebody. And then you see the mission select for Cetus pop up. And then there was the mission select for Fortuna, where it would show up and then it would go away because the game wouldn't let you land there. And then it was like the mission select for like some Earth node or some shit like that, where it was like the planes. He started doing the open worlds, right? And I was like, "Bro, what's going on?" And he's like, "I don't belong to a clan. I can't land." And that guy ended up, in order to be able to land the railjack, I had to invite him to the clan because I was the only person in the group that had permissions, obviously because it's my clan. But the other guys couldn't invite anybody to their clans, and one guy's was maxed. So I had to invite him to my clan so we wouldn't lose like 2 hours worth of farm. And like the intrinsics, because you would just dump it at that point. Now you save it like at the end of every mission. This was before that. So that was the first person that I invited. There's your trivia for the day, right? But anyway, old players stay busy finding stuff, like the additional stuff, and a lot of it tends to be more quote-unquote upstream a little bit. You'll find a lot of older players doing like Eidolon hunts, You'll find a lot of older players doing level caps with like weird weapons. Like there's this thing, and we've talked about it in the comment section. Occasionally, there was somebody that was talking about uh, like pride and ego being like a mid, like the teens to like the 20s for MR. But he was like, but laziness is like, he was like, I was in a mission with an LR3 that didn't do anything. And I'm like, yeah, pride and ego are like your teenage MRs and like your young adult, if you will. But laziness is eternal. So you eventually get to the point where it's like, once you get past the point of like, you know, you've got your first good Ash build and you've got like a Fenmore and like you've got your Zada combo down, right? Like, and you finally farmed up like a max arcane energize or something like that. Like some those little pinnacle moments, right? And like you're murdering level cap. Like you're finally really fucking strong on something. Well, you can't do that for forever. So you're going to go to the next thing that's super strong and you're going to work that build out and you're going to realize, oh, it's really, really strong. And then after you're like your 40th, 50th, or 60th level cap, you're going to go one of two routes. You're going to try to shit on level cap as hard as possible with the dumbest fucking weapon. Or you're going to just try to run essentially whatever. Like, how weak of a weapon can I run? And I'm in the variety group of that. So like when I tend to do level caps, once I finish the level cap, if I get to the point where I can melt a level cap enemy in 2 seconds, like a level cap demolist, ta-da, ding, put a button on it, like, or put a bow on it, the build's done, right? But some people, when you're in like the mid-teens and it's like your first time building a car correctly, or first time doing research on your own, and it gets approved and added to like a journal, like accepted to a journal, right? Your first time's hype as hell. But like your 50th time, it's like, oh, good. And then you just move on to the next thing, right? Like it's no longer, you know, the boundary you're pushing. So that's sort of the dynamic. You'll see some people do like the thing that happened before disruptions easily took over was people would try to do survivals, right? Get to level cap on survival. It's a little bit of a different dynamic. Not much most of the time, like especially on YouTube. And for me, it's a time issue. But you would do level cap survivals to get a build that's incredibly self-sufficient, especially solo and without invisibility. Like even when Shieldgate first came on the scene, being able to do a solo survival level cap was a big deal. If you've done long runs, you automatically know, even over 1,000, there is a massive difference in a game intensity. Even though the spawn rate is less, let's be honest, there is a massive difference in intensity of how you have to perform between running as 4 people and running as 1. Even though there's less enemies, the difference is that there's enemies with 4 people, their attention is divided up. Their aggro is going to different people. So you have less people firing at you. Well, if you're running solo, you got to be able to pay attention a little bit more because everything's aiming at you. It's never going to be aiming at something else. So that was the challenge. Now, nobody cares because it takes 8.5 hours to get the cap. It takes fucking forever. Everybody went to disruptions fairly because like a quick disruption run, the fastest I've heard is people have gotten it down to about an hour in terms of like the absolute speed racers. So this is one of the routes that people tend to take. You have the PT runners, you have the traders, you have like the dojo decorators. People tend to like specialize. So for me, I did the clan alliance route. I did like trying to make informative videos, especially like these talking videos. I like them. I like doing build videos, but the fact is explaining the philosophy. There's not a lot of higher MR players with my game time explaining genuinely what they think about the game. They're trying to make content. They're not talking about the game. So not saying like this is an important niche, but in terms of like, you know, somebody speaking freely about stuff, there aren't too many people doing what I'm doing. So it depends on how you view it and perceive it. Because a lot of the stuff that I would say for higher MR players, you're like, well, yeah, duh. But for somebody who's like MR9, like the question that I got was from my clanmate where he was at like MR14, right? And he's like, because he finally got to the point where he's not limited. This was his point of self-reflection, was he got to the point where he wasn't limited by MR anymore for weapons, right? So he was like, well, I'm just building, like, what do I do now? I have access to Deviri, I have all this stuff. I'm MR14. Like, what do I really go for now? Like, what do high MR, like, he's like, it just seems like it's more of the same shit. And then you run out. And I'm like, well, yeah, that's kind of the case. Like, that is a very accurate observation, right? Like, once you get past MR14, like, it's just, ta-da, you've done 10% of the game or whatever that affinity works out to, and congrats, you've got more of the same shit. So I'm making this video in response to this. So the fact is people tend to pick a specialty, and one of the good things about Warframe, let's be honest, Warframe has a lot of really good things and a lot of really bad things and a lot of stuff they're working on. But one of the great things about this is the fact that even though this game is classically tagged as like a pseudo MMO, the fact is this has more in common with a sandbox, with public looking for group attached to it. Like when you do a mission, like a public mission, you're not actually looking for anybody. The game just gives you company, and it's for people not even working together, just doing the same thing side by side, but you're not really interacting with them. And then you go to the next mission, maybe you stay with them for like 2-3 missions, but you're not actually working together. Like the most amount of coordination that we've really got is like defense nodes, mobile defense, because everybody has to like stand and protect the thing. Not really anymore, because there's so much power creep. Like everybody's been in mobile defenses where you have like that one asshole that runs off. But what would it be? It would be like a sabotage, right? Like a sabotage, you could technically work together to speed that up, because you have like, you have to go like hit a console, and then you have like somebody pick up, because you have the 3 ways of completing a sabotage, right? Like you can put the coolant into the reactor, you can put the power cell back into the reactor, you could not run the reactor at all, right? Like that sort of stuff. So there's the options. So that sort of stuff you can do, but most people are just going to do the shove the reactor, the power cell back into the reactor because it's the fastest, right? Because if you do the coolant, you don't have to do the mobile defense, or the defense, quote unquote, and you don't have to deal with the timer. And most people don't know about the no coolant option at all thing, right? Where you just wait. So that you can technically work together with. But everybody tends to pick something and they go do it. And they'll get like really, really good at that one thing. And then once they get really, really good at that one thing, they'll tend to try to figure out what other bullshit works too. Like you'll see like on some, like you can tell a really, really good Eidolon runner. One of the tells is that they'll have like maybe like a speed run, and then you'll see their other YouTube videos and they're running fucking garbage. Okay? That is somebody that has gotten really, really high in skill level and is like, well, let's see what else I can fucking run, right? Like Cryogenian, for example, in Disruption. The dude had all of the Deviri melees level capped before I got off work for the weekend to be able to play Deviri. He was already fucking done with all of the weapons. That is a super high level Disruption player. You know what I'm saying? Like I can do disruptions, no issues. But to be able to do that so quickly is a lot of industriousness. So when you look at stuff like that, a lot of times you have to look at people running bullshit. You check in the past, you see like, oh, they're doing like meta builds, boom, they're one-shotting. Then you'll see like 10 more videos or something like that if you're on YouTube. One shot, one shot, one shot. And then you'll see them like running weird shit. Like that's what's going on is they figured out the build the first part of the learning curve is getting to the top, and then you tweak your build a little bit, then you see what is required to get the damage done, and then it's like, okay, well, I figured out this puzzle, let's see what other spaghetti I can throw at the wall that will stick. And then they start doing weird shit, right? So that's generally how the rhythm goes. So if you're looking for stuff like that, that's the rhythm that you're looking for. If it's like a disruption runner, you don't really see the survival community anymore. I was part of it because like tower keys and whatnot, right? Like there used to be a benefit of running these older stuff. So it kind of depends on what you're trying to go for, what you enjoy. Should you choose to continue playing Warframe, if you feel like the progression that is set out by DE isn't worth doing, or is something that you're not focused on anymore, where you're like, oh, I've gotten to a point where it's good enough, right? Because like you really don't need, except for some quality of life stuff, you really don't need to go past MR16. Let's be honest here. Once you get past 16, the last gate is done. Everything above that is kind of whatever. I mean, especially with the amount of intrinsics that we have in the game right now, leveling like 5 or 6 frames, 5 or 6 weapons, and like 2 or 3 sentinels plus the intrinsics gets you into the mid-teens now. Right? Like if you level all of your Railjack intrinsics and the tldr intrinsics, that is a lot of MR. So it is what it is, but it's okay to find something, and it can be something weird. Say you want to run like spy missions and you actually want to do them right instead of like the boom and zoom. Like, what's that penguin meme where it's like, oh, it's a stealth mission, and then there's like, so does that mean kaboom, Wolkowski? And the other guy's like, yes, Rico, kaboom. And you run through with like a Tonka or some shit like that. Like, you're not being stealthy at all. Some people enjoy doing stealth missions, and they'll try to figure out like weird ways of doing stealth missions. Listen, you don't have to explain whatever the hell you're doing. Like, find something you enjoy. You can try whatever the fuck you want. And a lot of these players that do these weirder setups, this is where the Adaro stealth run came from. Like that sort of stuff. That's how that stuff gets found. That's what keeps the game fresh, is those ideas aren't coming from the high-end players. Right? It's from somebody trying bullshit. That's a player that has gotten super high and is now kind of bored and is trying random stuff, and in that creative process they find something that works really fucking well. Like even with me, like my last serious contribution to the meta was Hildren, like the 4 Hildren build with Orphix Venom, or not Scarlet Spear. But it doesn't mean I was the very first. I know I posted about it on Reddit, and then like 2 days later everybody was fucking using it, and I got a bunch of fucking upvotes for it. So it could have been, but it doesn't mean I was the very first though. We were using that shit for days before that shit popped off. Because it's just, it works. But you have to be willing to try bullshit. But that also means in order to try bullshit, you have to understand why it would work. And that means you've climbed the hill of skill to the point where you understand not just being able to copy a build and to be able to perform the actions to do the level cap or, you know, the 6x3+2 Eidolon run. But you have to do it and understand it first to then turn around and start trying bullshit. And that's where a lot of the older players are, is they're trying new things that are interesting to them, and then they're applying their knowledge to something that would seem like garbage to somebody else. Like the Quats is good. It's an encumber build, and you build magazine on it. But if you're not willing to try shit on it, you're not going to notice. right? Like that was one of the videos that I made that a really old MR player that's in my category asked about, was like, hey, could you make this work? It's because he was trying something, really enjoys the weapon, but had gotten to a point he sent me what his builds were, and I was like, okay, I know what you're going for. Let me see if I can make it work. And I got to test. It was great for me. It was great for him. It is what it is. So you have to figure out if you want to keep playing this game, because the one downside, it's a positive and a downside. It's a positive if you know what to do with it. It's a downside if you don't. You can either view Warframe as like the equivalent of a roller coaster, like Space Mountain at Epcot for Disney, right? You get on it, you travel around, there's all these nice things to see, but no roller coaster is like an infinite amount of roller coaster. Like you would die, right? But if you're expecting to be able to sit on something and go from place to place to place, and the game constantly entertains you, you're going to have a bad time in this game. Because with Warframe, you can finish this game. Okay? You can finish Warframe. It's not like a World of Warcraft, right? Where the number of players that 100%ed World of Warcraft, you could probably count them on one hand. Even the super high elite level players that are doing like Mythic Plus content probably don't have 100% of everything in World of Warcraft, right? Well, that's not the case with Warframe. You can 100% this game. So if you look at that and you go, cool, my to-do list is done. This will give me more time to play this game that I love, but I get to go focus on the weird shit that I want to do. And once content comes out, I'll just go do the content, finish that up, 100% that, and then I get to go back to my weird stuff. You don't have to explain it to anybody what it is, but if you want to be constantly entertained and have the game like just wash entertainment over you while you sit there and fucking drool, this might not be the game for you, because you can finish this fucking game. But if you look at it and you're like, I want a sandbox and I want to be able to do my own stuff, the fact that you can 100% Warframe and then go do whatever the hell you want might be a massive fucking positive. Because, like, there's plenty of games that are popular right now that don't have ends, but they, like you're locked in like a roller coaster track. You can't do anything else. You can change loadouts or something like that, like, say, like Apex. If you wanted to play Apex and go, oh, I want to completely explore the map and, like, you know, take pictures of everything, you're going to have to do it as people are killing you. That's not what the game's meant for. Well, with this, there's nothing coming behind you saying the game's not meant for that. You can go through Fortuna, go through every fucking cave, catch all the fish. You could stay in, not Fortuna, Orvalis. You can go through every cave. You can the map's massive. You can go through every little fortress thing built into any mountain that you want. You can go kill Prophet Taker. You can run depots and stuff like that. You can do whatever you want that's in this game as much as you want. Now, there's some timers for, like, say, like Eidolons, right? Where you can only do it for so long. But the fact is if you only want to do Eidolons, there's nothing stopping you from going and playing another game for a day. And when night comes on, you just jump back on and do Eidolons. If that's how you want to play the game, that's how you can play the game. If you want to go capture floofs, you can go capture or do conservation to get floofs. You can go do that for like 700 hours straight. There's nothing stopping you. Warframe is not going to tell you no on how much you can do something. Now, obviously, if you enjoy like an event or something like that, might be a little tough. But the fact is that you get to choose what you enjoy, and then you can go do it. Warframe's not going to say no to you. Warframe has problems, but let's be honest, that's not one of them. So if find something you enjoy, if you want to try making a clan, make a clan. Making clans and inviting people and teaching people can be incredibly enjoyable. What is also enjoyable is finding other people that are about the same MR as you, getting like 4 or 5 of your buddies together, and or especially 4 people, so it's a full squad. So it would be 4 people or 8 people would be the ideal for a ghost clan, and everybody plays together. Like everybody gets in a group Discord call or whatever, and you build a dojo together. That's fucking hype as hell. Okay? Right? Like that's cool as shit. So stuff like that, it can be incredibly rewarding if you're a super experienced player. Bringing on some new bros, that can be fulfilling. Especially once you see them starting getting up into like the 20s and 30s. That's happened with me. It is super fulfilling, and then you get like one of those experienced players being like, man, you know, I've been playing this game so long. I know the talk when it happens. It's like, you know, I've been thinking about doing like my own clan, and I'm like, oh, dude, I remember when you were like, you start reminiscing a little bit. Then I hit them with the same offer as always. Sometimes they take it, sometimes they don't. Where it's like, oh, listen, dude, if you want to do a clan, I can't recommend it enough. You've been playing a long time. You definitely have the skills and the game knowledge. You've been reading the wiki, watching videos, playing. You've done everything, so you can speak from a point of experience and from a well-researched, level-headed position. You understand how to play the game. Start your clan if you want to. Bring it into the Alliance, and let me just fund all of your research. I'll just give you all of the research as like a gift, and if you want to stay in the Alliance, you can. Or you can leave, or you can stay, or you can leave if you want and do your own thing. Some have stayed, a lot have stayed, but some have left. Right? Like it's one of the cool parts about being like my level is that if one of my like middle tier guys or like my guys that are like in their 20s, right? Are like, man, I think I'm gonna start like a dojo, right? Or my own clan, start my own thing. I want to feel I enjoy teaching people. Like had my friend come on, you know, I can just fund their fucking dojo, right? Like, I'd have to go farm some mutagen samples right now because I gave all of mine away. But farming up 5k mutagen samples is like a fucking afternoon for me. But a new player, that might take literally hours and hours and hours and hours, maybe like a week, right? Especially if they don't have like resource boosters and like a Smita and they don't have access to Steel Path. Like, that grind can fucking hurt. But so you can do whatever you want. If anything you see as like, once you get to the point where it's like, oh, well, there really isn't anything specific that I need to do, you can just pick something and try it out. I wasn't big on the floofs, like the conservation thing. It is kind of enjoyable though, let's be honest. It's very relaxing. I used to do like I would used to collect floofs. Would go do conservation, throw up a YouTube documentary on another monitor, and I'd go do like conservation hunting. So stuff like that, you just get to pick. But the short answer is you get to do whatever you want, and I mean it in a positive way. Anyway, conversation done. I hope this helps. Just enjoy the game, right? Take it easy, guys. Later. Have a blessed day.